So, I don't know if I've mentioned this explicitly, but all of March on this channel has been an exploration because my biggest art goal at the moment is finding my own art style and solidifying it. And in order to do that, we've been steadily working our way through this painting. We started with some really nice line art and then threw in a bunch of beautiful dramatic color and light. Now, I love this painting so far. It is absolutely gorgeous. However, it feels like it's missing a little bit of Srishness. I love adding a bit of magic and fantasy and holographic color and textures and sparkle, because who doesn't like some extra sparkle in their art, right? So today I'm going to show you the 5 extra steps that I take to add a little bit of magic to my paintings that take it from looking like this to this. I'm going to share with you all of the tips and techniques that go into this process because we don't gatekeep information in this house, and I really hope you guys enjoy it and actually try them out and see if you like them. If you enjoyed this video and learned something today, please do remember to like and subscribe. Comment below your favorite of these 5 tips and any other tips that you have to add a little more extra zhuzh to your paintings. But without much further ado, here are my 5 steps to adding magic to your painting. This is the painting so far, and like with everything else in life, I'm gonna start with a plan. Normally you'd plan a painting at the very beginning and then build everything up based on that plan. However, I actually like to think of my painting in 2 stages. The first stage is getting it to this point in the process, so that involves the sketching, lighting, anatomy, colors, and rendering in general. But ever since I switched to doing just the one painting a month and really allowing my art to take its time, take up space, and breathe, I've learned that it actually helps a lot to do a second round of planning right before I add the magical finishing touches. This is because although we've planned out the initial piece, over time paintings tend to kind of take up a life of their own and demand to be painted in a certain way. And so I like to do an updated plan with this in mind and see how we can transform the new version of the art into a more magical one. So as you can see, I've started by creating a translucent white layer above the entire painting, and then I'm just going around here scribbling down little notes on how I can change it up, where I think the painting needs more color, more sparkle, and so on, and what sort of textures I want to incorporate. Now, my favorite aesthetic in fantasy art is the holographic or iridescent kind, where there's little magical spots of rainbow glow. So I definitely wanted that on the snake and in the little wavy shapes of the background. I did also consider having some large flowers at the bottom of the piece, but it eventually felt like way too much. But that is the beauty of doing a planning stage, you guys. You get to just brain dump over your painting, and then you can decide which of the ideas you actually want to keep. Like for instance, I also wanted to do a large crescent moon behind her, but again, that didn't happen, or rather it didn't happen exactly like that. But the point is, I now have a fairly solid idea of where this painting wants to go, so the rest of it is basically just legwork. And let's now get down to said legwork. The first thing I knew I wanted to change was the colors in the background. Thankfully, this was its own layer, so I just inverted and hue shifted the colors, then added contrast with the bucket fill tool, and now we can introduce our first texture. I get all of my textures on Unsplash, which is an incredible free resource, and I found this holographic texture that I thought would add some really lovely small shapes to the big waves in the background. I experimented with the blending modes and hue set adjustments before realizing I did need need more value contrast. So I created a new layer and painted in some black around the colorful waves. It is important to be open to changing pretty much everything about your painting, even if you've already spent hours on it. I like to think of it like having a child or a pet. You change your entire life around to make sure that they can live their best life, and it's the same with your painting. Sometimes I'll literally get to like the 90% mark and then delete and redo massive elements just because the painting demands it. Anyway, wow, that got off track. I wanted a bit of a dark holographic look to the snake, but as you can imagine, having a dark snake against a dark background was tricky. So the snake is definitely the one element in this painting that went through the most iterations. At first, I thought of giving it a patterned skin, but then that was way too much noise, so I changed it, then I got rid of the skin entirely, and I thought it would be cool as just a wireframe. It was a lot. Then again, snakes are rarely known for their conformity. I also eventually blurred out the texture of the background because it was too distracting, but it gives us this lovely color variation, so that's nice. Now it's time to add in the extra magic. Like I said, I wanted a crescent in this painting, but the big one would have been just way too much visual noise. So I opted for a little tiny one on the snake's head and added some purple glow around it. Another important step in this process was to color the line art. I actually color picked from the background for this, and it really helped to push the character firmly into the scene. I also, of course, colored the lines on the snake, and yeah, again, that will eventually change. The best magical element of them all, however, is the floating specks. They kind of look like stars here because there is a black background and a moon, but I actually had to be less liberal with these than I would have liked to. Floating specks are a great way to add a ton of little shapes in flat areas, but I didn't want them to overshadow the colors and shapes in the wave. And finally, and this isn't magical, but it's just a practical step, I added a bit of shadow to separate the character from the wave behind her. It's a cheap trick to ensure that the edges aren't lost and stay separate. This is possibly the most time-consuming step, so when you get to this stage, strap in. Now that we have all these magical changes, we're gonna go ahead and readjust the base image to work with them. I started by adjusting the color of the secondary light in her hair because it was previously red and cyan, and now I wanted it to be closer to the color of the wave around her. And in a moment of silliness, I decided to then hue shift the wave, so then I had to go back and also hue shift the hair again. It wasn't my brightest moment, I know. Anyway, this was the stage where I really just wanted to sort out the snake. It was just not working with the rest of the painting, so I started to mess about with the colors and values, and this was the stage where I thought, hey, maybe the snake can just be a wireframe and we don't have to think about it. At this stage, I just had to leave the painting be and go sleep on it. And when I came back the next morning, I realized it was just way too many little lines to not be on a flat background of some sort. So then I had to go back in and create a flat silhouette under the lines of the snake. And I just started by painting it black for the moment, because now it is time for the most abstract final step. This is probably the hardest step to explain because it is the most intuitive part of the process, but this is the stage where we go in and add the little tiny details that will finish up this piece. I like to zoom in quite close towards the end here and start to add in little bits of glitter and scattered shapes, maybe some extra refinement to what is already there. I started by giving her extra lashes because we love fluffy eyelashes here. I also added more detail to the eye because it felt rather flat, so some extra rendering in the iris as well as more specular highlights to increase that gloss in the eye. I then grabbed a scatter brush and threw in some glitter on the eye and the top of the cheekbone as well as on the shoulder because we also love some body shimmer. I actually wanted the snake to be more than just a flat black shape, and going back to the plan we made at the very beginning, I wanted it to have that dark holographic quality to the skin. So I also added some colorful glitter to the snake skin, but even that was a little too subtle for me. So instead I grabbed this rainbow brush. It's just a round pressure opacity brush, but with hue shift dynamics. I used this brush to create this pastel rainbow highlight where I felt like the snake skin would reflect light the most. Snakes are just basically dangerous cylinders, so they have this bar of highlight like you see on a cylinder. I created this highlight at multiple points on the snake, and then I blended the edges out so it wasn't just a flat rainbow brush stroke. This brush, by the way, is from the Rakuri brush set V2.0, which I will link down below. Then I got carried away and painted rainbow everything because hi, I'm Srish and I still don't do moderation. That's pretty much it for the tutorial, though if you want to catch the entire process, including bits of rendering that I left out because they're not really relevant to the tutorial itself, you can check out the whole process on Monday on my Patreon. But here is this month's finished painting, Rising. Which of these tips do you already do, and which ones do you plan to integrate into your workflow? Are there any other tips you have to adding more magic to your painting? Let me know in the comments below. Also, the usual reminder that my brush kit with over 60 custom brushes for Photoshop and Krita is now available on my Gumroad. Check it out up here, and thank you so much for supporting the channel. Remember to like and subscribe, which is also a great way to support this channel, and make sure you have your notifications turned on because next week's style study is one you want to catch for sure. Come say hi on Instagram and Discord because I really love talking to you guys. All of the links are down in the description below. But that's all I have to say today, so thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I really hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. Here's a fun video I did a little while back about setting art goals that you might also love, so check that out and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye!